It was just a normal day, the kind that slips between your fingers and leaves little trace, an endless loop of routine, comfort, and fatigue. I woke up to the familiar chirp of my alarm, showered in the dim blue haze of early morning, dressed in clothes I'd ironed the night before. Coffee, commute, work, the static white noise of office life, the buzz of monitors and clatter of keyboards, brief conversations with coworkers whose faces blurred into one. Then back home. The house was warm, the kind of warmth that made your limbs heavy with safety. My partner greeted me with a tired smile, the kids running down the hallway like tiny hurricanes of laughter and chaos. We had dinner together, the TV murmuring in the background, and I felt that muted kind of contentment that only comes when everything is still and normal. Just a normal day. I was exhausted by the time night came, bone-deep tired, the kind that seeps into your spine. After tucking the kids into bed, kisses on foreheads, soft giggles, the usual stalling, I finally had a few moments to myself. I moved through the quiet house, turned off lights one by one, checked the locks, and slipped into the bedroom. I was brushing my teeth when it started. A scream. High-pitched, sharp, sudden. It came from the children's room. My heart seized before my mind could process it. I dropped the toothbrush, foam still in my mouth, and bolted down the hall. I expected chaos, flailing limbs, crying, someone hurt or scared of the dark. But when I opened the door, the room was empty. Not just the kids are hiding, empty. It was dead silent. No rustle under the blankets. No tiny feet peeking from under the bed. No giggling from behind curtains. The lights were still on. Everything was in its place. The stuffed animals, the coloring books, the toys strewn across the floor, like always. But they were gone. I blinked. My mind fumbled with logic. I called out their names. No response. I began searching, quickly, methodically. Under the bed first, nothing but shadows and a crayon. I opened the toy chest, pulled it apart, sifted through blocks and dolls, and soft, plush creatures with button eyes. I opened the closet, moved clothes aside, tapped the back wall. Empty. They weren't in the hallway, not the bathroom, not anywhere. I stood by the window, trying to make sense of it all. Maybe they snuck into the backyard. Maybe this was some elaborate prank, a game of hide and seek that had gone too far. I looked out into the night. The wind stirred the branches of the tree beyond the fence. All was still. Then, behind me, soft as breath, I heard it. A creak, slow, drawn out, wood on wood. I turned. The closet door was ajar. I had just checked it. I was sure. It had been closed, locked. But now it was half open, and something black was coiling from inside it like smoke. I stared, frozen. My legs wouldn't move. My breath caught in my throat. Then it surged forward, a mass of blackness, thick and writhing, like a living shadow. It had no eyes, no face, just a presence, a wrongness that burned into my skin. My instincts screamed to run, but it was too late. The thing reached me in a heartbeat and wrapped around my limbs, yanking me off my feet. I hit the ground hard, then was dragged toward the open door. I kicked, screamed, clawed at the floorboards, but the shadow was unyielding. It wrapped around me like vines, cold and strong. I tried to call out for help, but the moment I opened my mouth, the darkness poured in, and then the world collapsed. I landed on stone. The air was thick and wet, and it stank of mold and rot. I gagged, coughing up the remnants of whatever had pulled me under. My limbs shook. The silence around me was suffocating. I blinked into the dark, my eyes straining to adjust. I was no longer in my house. This place, it wasn't real. Couldn't be. A cavern stretched out before me, lined with jagged rock and patches of glowing fungus. The ceiling was lost in shadows. Strange tunnels spiraled in every direction like veins through flesh. The only light came from thin veins of blue that pulsed softly underfoot. I stood up slowly, every muscle trembling. Behind me, the path was gone, just solid stone. I was alone. Something rustled in the tunnel to my left, then a whisper, high and childlike. "Daddy." I spun. No one. My heart pounded. I backed away from the noise and bumped into something cold and metallic. I turned to find a mirror, an ornate standing mirror with rusted edges, standing upright in the middle of the tunnel. But the reflection wasn't mine. It showed the children's bedroom, normal, untouched. My children were there, sitting on the floor, playing with toys. One of them looked toward the mirror, toward me, and smiled. I screamed their name. They didn't respond. Then the reflection changed. The children vanished. The room faded into smoke, replaced by a face, distorted, monstrous, skinless, smiling. Its eyes bled shadow as it pressed a twisted hand against the glass. I stumbled back, and the mirror shattered into 1,000 whispering shards. Laughter echoed down the tunnels, not joyous, not innocent, mocking. I turned and ran. The cavern stretched endlessly. Every few steps, the tunnel changed. I passed through rooms made of bone, staircases that turned upside down, bridges that ended in nothing, and always, just behind me, I heard them. Monsters, crawling, skittering, scraping. Some howled, others giggled. Each one fed on something, not flesh, but fear. They whispered things as I passed, memories, failures, old regrets. They mimicked my children's voices, called me a coward, a failure, a liar. And as the fear rose in my chest, I saw them get closer. Their forms sharpened, too many teeth, eyes in places where there shouldn't be eyes, mouths that opened wider than skulls should allow. But the more I ignored the fear, the more I fought to stay calm, the more they seemed to recoil. It was a game, a sick, cruel game. And they were feeding on me. Somewhere deep in that hollow world of nightmares, I began to realize something. I wasn't just trying to survive. I was being tested, and the only way out was through fear, through the monsters, through whatever trial they had prepared for me. So I steadied my breath, wiped the blood and sweat from my face, and stepped forward, deeper into the hollow beneath. I don't know how long I walked. Time didn't work here. There was no sun, no sky, only endless black, threaded with veins of that strange, bioluminescent blue. My steps echoed against damp stone. The air was thick, almost chewable. It pressed in on me like a hand. Sometimes the ground pulsed beneath my feet, as if I were walking on the back of something enormous and sleeping. Sometimes it wasn't sleeping. I passed through more chambers. Some were small, like forgotten closets of the mind, filled with personal things I hadn't seen in years. My childhood toy soldier lay on the floor of one. In another, I saw my high school bedroom, unchanged, down to the poster I'd tacked on the wall in anger and torn down the next morning. They were accurate in detail, but wrong in energy. Dim, muted, like memories retold by someone who never really lived them. The further I went, the more things began to move. Shadows peeled off the walls and watched from the edges of the tunnels, always just beyond the edge of visibility. They whispered to each other, sometimes to me, not in words, but in impressions, like emotions forced into my skull. Pity, hunger, contempt. They were waiting. The first real creature I encountered wasn't like the others. It had form, a body. It crawled out of a tunnel on its belly, long and thin, like a man stretched too far. Its joints bent backward, Its fingers were twice as long as they should have been. No face, just a pale expanse of skin where one should be. It sniffed the air with invisible senses and turned toward me with slow, deliberate motion. I froze. Then it spoke. The voice didn't come from a mouth. It vibrated inside my skull. "You're not ready." I backed away, but it followed, slow, precise. "You still carry it." "Carry what?" I asked aloud, surprised at how small my voice sounded in that place. It didn't answer. Instead, it opened its arms and reached for me. Something about the gesture, welcoming, almost gentle, made my stomach twist. I took a step back. My heel caught a loose stone. I stumbled and hit the wall behind me hard enough to knock the air from my lungs. "You want it gone?" The faceless thing was upon me, fingers brushing my forehead, and for a moment, I was in my old house, the first one I'd ever lived in, the one where I learned to be afraid of the dark. It was nighttime again. I was 7 years old, standing in the hallway. The bathroom light was off. I had to cross it to reach the kitchen. I heard a sound, someone breathing under the stairs. My child self stood paralyzed, too terrified to move. And in the dream I did the same. The creature was inside the memory with me now, its long arm curled around my smaller self's shoulder. "This is where it began," it whispered. I shut my eyes. "No," I said. "This isn't real." But it felt real. The terror, the shame, the cold sweat under my pajamas. I forced myself forward, step by step. With each motion, the illusion flickered, cracked. The hallway vanished. The creature hissed. It shrank, folding in on itself like a dying flame. Then it was gone. I collapsed to the floor, gasping. I understood. These things weren't just monsters. They were memories, corrupted, weaponized. The next chamber was round, perfectly round, as if carved by an architect obsessed with geometry. In the center stood a throne, bone white and veined with black. Sitting on it was a woman, or what once was a woman. She was tall, regal, clad in layers of dark silk that moved like smoke. Her face was obscured by a porcelain mask, smooth and flawless, but blank. Her hands rested on the armrests, long, elegant fingers tipped with claws that drummed slowly against the stone. She said nothing as I entered, just watched. Her presence weighed on me like gravity. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice hoarse. She tilted her head slowly. I couldn't see her eyes, but I felt them. They pierced through me like knives of ice. "This is the hollow." Her voice was like glass cracking. "It is beneath all things." "Why am I here?" "Because you hear the cries." "The children?" I stepped forward. "Where are they?" The woman stood, and her mask cracked. Not broke, cracked. A jagged fissure opened from forehead to chin. Behind it, blackness swirled. "They were never taken," she said. "They are the lure. You are the meal." And from the cracks in the walls, they came. Dozens of them, creatures like the first, others worse, crawling on all fours, slithering, some with too many limbs, some with none. All of them focused on me. The woman raised a hand. "Show us your fear." And then the walls disappeared. I was surrounded by screens, hundreds of them, suspended in the air. Each one played a scene from my life, my failures, my regrets, my lies, my insecurities, the time I yelled at my kids, the time I let someone cry alone, the time I didn't speak up. I tried to look away. I couldn't. "Stop," I whispered. "Please, stop." The creatures closed in, feeding on my shame like it was nectar. The air grew hot. The ground shook. I fell to my knees, and that's when I remembered the mirror. the one that had shown me the children. I closed my eyes. I pictured them, their faces, their laughter, the way their tiny hands wrapped around my fingers when they were scared, the way they looked at me like I was their whole world. I held that memory tight. "I'm not afraid of you," I whispered. "I'm afraid of losing them. That's not the same." And the hollow trembled. The queen shrieked. Her porcelain mask shattered into 1,000 shards. The creatures recoiled, clawing at their faces as light began to seep into the chamber. Light from me. My chest burned, white hot, like a star was cracking open beneath my ribs. I screamed, not in pain, but in release. They vanished, all of them. I was alone again. I stood there for what felt like hours. Then the ground beneath me broke. I fell, plunging into a tunnel of roots and wind and rushing shadow. And when I hit the bottom, I was back in the children's room. The sun was rising outside the window. The toys were scattered across the floor. The air was still. And my children were there, sitting cross-legged, playing, laughing, as if nothing had ever happened. One of them looked up. "Daddy, you okay?" I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said. "I think I am." But in the back of my mind, I still felt it, the hollow, watching, waiting, and I knew my journey wasn't over yet. At first, I thought I was home for good. I went through the motions of the morning, hugging the kids, watching them eat their cereal, sipping coffee that I swear tasted brighter than usual. The sun outside painted the walls in that soft golden hue that made everything look unreal in the best possible way. My partner chatted with me over breakfast, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't just walked through the beating heart of a nightmare. But the hollow had changed me. It was in the way shadows moved around corners now, how I sometimes saw flickers of faces in mirrors that weren't mine, the way I could hear faint whispers in the stillness of night, not words, not clearly, but tones, shapes of syllables brushing past my ears like moths. I thought I could forget it, thought I could bury it with routine and sunlight. I was wrong. It started with the toys. One night, after the kids had gone to bed, I stepped into their room to check on them and found their toys arranged in a circle. Not carelessly scattered like usual, but placed deliberately, as if someone had laid them out in ritual. In the center of the circle was a drawing. I picked it up. Black crayon, jagged lines, a crude sketch of a door, tall, thin, slightly open, and behind it, 2 glowing red dots. I asked my eldest the next day if they had drawn it. They shook their head. "No, Daddy. It was just there." I didn't press. That night, I dreamed again. This time, I knew I was dreaming. I stood in my hallway, house silent, lights off, but instead of fear, I felt drawn, like I had somewhere I was meant to go. At the end of the hallway, the door to the basement was open. That door hadn't been open in years. We rarely used the basement. Old storage, flickering lights, cobwebs. It was more a forgotten cavity than a room. But in the dream, it pulsed with importance, with invitation. I descended slowly. The stairs groaned under my feet. Each step downward seemed to stretch longer than the last. Gravity thickened. The walls felt closer. At the bottom, there was no basement. Just another stone tunnel, lit in that same sickly bioluminescent glow. And waiting at the threshold was the woman, no longer masked, no longer regal. She stood barefoot in a torn black dress, her hair wild, her skin pale and bruised like pressed porcelain. Her eyes glowed with something old and mournful. "You came back," she said. "I didn't mean to." "You left the door open." I didn't argue. I didn't ask what door. I knew. We walked. She led me through a tunnel I'd never seen before. It was narrower than the others, more organic. Its walls seemed to breathe. Along the way, she spoke in riddles. The hollow is hungry, but not for flesh. It feeds on the echoes of your kind. You think you escaped, but it left something behind. I didn't understand. Then the path opened into a vast chamber of hanging chains. Hundreds of them, each one connected to something suspended. People, curled like fetuses, asleep or dead. Their eyes moved beneath their lids. Some whispered, others sobbed. "What is this?" "Memory," she said. "The hollow keeps pieces of all who visit, attacks." I stepped closer to one. The face was familiar. It was me, a version of me, younger, afraid, crying, calling for his mother in the dark. He opened his eyes and looked at me. "Don't leave me here," he whispered. I backed away, trembling. The woman reached for my shoulder. "You must reclaim yourself, or you will never be whole again." The chains began to rattle. A sound like distant thunder rolled through the chamber. Something was waking. We fled, back through the tunnels, through winding paths that bent on themselves. The walls were bleeding now, thick, black ichor, oozing from cracks, dripping from the ceiling. The hollow was rejecting me, or perhaps it wanted me to stay, forever. We reached a fork. She stopped. "This is where I leave you," she said. "No, come with me." She shook her head slowly. "I am not like you. I am born of this place." "But you helped me." Her eyes softened. "I envied your fear. It means you can change. We cannot." From the darkness behind her, shapes began to stir. "You must go, before it remembers what you are." "What am I?" She smiled, truly smiled, for the first time. A spark. Then she turned, and the darkness took her. I ran. The tunnel sloped downward, spiraling into what felt like the core of the hollow. The air grew thin. My lungs burned. The shadows screamed. I was no longer afraid. Not really. Just determined. I passed more illusions. Each tried to slow me. A mirror of my wife, crying, accusing me of abandoning her. A doppelganger of my children, cold, lifeless, staring at me with empty eyes. A memory of myself, alone, small, sitting in the dark, with no one coming to check on me. I pushed through them all. Finally, I reached the heart, a cavern of pure shadow. At its center, a throne, blacker than anything I'd seen, carved not of stone, but from fear itself. On it sat no one, but behind it, tall, towering, infinite, stood a figure cloaked in pure void. No features, no face, just presence. The source, the hollow itself. I stepped forward. It spoke. "You have seen us." "Yes." "You have walked our ways." "I have." "You do not tremble." "No." Silence. Then, "You are not food." "No." "Then you are fire." The throne crumbled. The figure reached toward me. I didn't run. I reached back. Our hands touched. And for a moment, I understood. All the fear in the world, all the shadows, all the screams in the night, they were echoes, hungry echoes. But I had brought light into them, and that made me something they could never be. I woke up, this time, not in the children's room, not even in my bed. I stood in the hallway. The light was on. I walked to the children's room and opened the door. They were asleep, peacefully, dreaming. I stood in the doorway for a long time. The shadows didn't move. They watched. But this time, I watched back. and they blinked first. The hollow never truly let me go. Even now, days, maybe weeks, since I first fell through the doorway of shadows, it lingers. I feel it behind every blink, under every pause in a conversation, in the soft hum of electric silence when everyone else has gone to sleep. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had passed through something. I had stood at the core of my own terror and survived. More than survived. I had changed. It began subtly. At first, I simply noticed more. The way people's expressions shifted when they thought no one was watching. The tone beneath the words they spoke. I could read fear like a scent now. A vibration. And worse, there were moments I could taste it. My coworkers avoided me. My family watched me differently. My partner loved me still. I could feel that. But something about me now sat just outside their understanding, like a song played in reverse. A melody they could almost recognize, but not quite. I kept the hollow secret. What else could I do? I couldn't explain it. It wasn't a place. It was a presence. A reality that slithered just below the surface of our own, waiting for the weak points. And those points were growing. It started in mirrors. I would walk past one and catch my reflection a moment too slow. Sometimes it smiled when I wasn't. Sometimes it blinked late, or not at all. One morning I caught my reflection whispering. I pressed my ear to the glass, and I heard it. She is calling. I turned away, but I felt it pull at me. That night, I didn't dream. I fell. Back into the hollow. No warning, no fear, just darkness. And her. She stood waiting in a room made of roots and flesh. The walls pulsed like a living thing. From the ceiling hung pale lights like glowing fruit, illuminating her form in that soft, familiar glow. She looked more human now, softer, less sharp at the edges. Her eyes no longer glowed red, but shimmered silver, like moonlight seen through deep water. "You're changing," she said. "So are you." She nodded slowly. We were never meant to touch the fire. "What is it?" She stepped close, reached for my chest, pressed her hand to where my heart should be. You. It was burning inside me. That ember, the thing I left the hollow with. It had grown since then. It flickered every time I felt truth, every time I faced a fear, instead of flinching. "You are more than you were," she said, "but less than you will become." "I thought I was done," I whispered. "I thought the trials were over." She smiled, gently this time. "You passed the tests below. Now come the ones above." I awoke with blood on my pillow. Not mine. I checked the children first. They were fine, sleeping, but their toys had been rearranged again. This time into a spiral, a path. Leading to the closet, it was shut. I opened it slowly, afraid not of what was inside, but of what might not be. I feared the absence more than the presence now, that she would be gone, that I had been abandoned, that none of it had meant anything, but she wasn't gone. Etched into the back wall of the closet was a new door, a drawing, but it pulsed, as if the paper were breathing, and I knew I could go back, any time. I returned night after night, not always by will. Sometimes I'd blink, and I'd be there, mid-conversation, only to find myself walking tunnels of ash and whisper. Sometimes I'd fall asleep at my desk, and awaken in rooms filled with echoing children's laughter, or their screams. Each time the hollow was different, shifting, learning. It responded to me now, reacted to my emotions. When I entered angry, it turned red hot, molten. When I entered sad, it rained shadows from the ceilings. When I entered still, it stilled with me. And she was always there, guiding, watching, loving in her own terrible way. We no longer made love, like before. That had been raw, primal, a spark. Now it was deeper, slower. We merged not just flesh to flesh, but thought to thought. I could feel her memories as if they were mine, ancient, infinite. She had existed in the hollow long before I ever walked this world. She had watched countless others fall in. Most were consumed, some resisted. A few, like me, adapted. Why me? I asked once. She didn't answer with words. She just placed my hand on her chest, and I saw her loneliness, her eternity, and the one time she felt something different. When I reached for her, not to destroy, but to understand, but it couldn't last. The hollow began pushing harder. It bled into reality, glitches, echoes. I'd see people in the supermarket with shadows that didn't match their bodies. I'd hear my children speaking in voices too deep, too old. One night, I woke to find my partner standing at the foot of our bed, eyes open, but unseeing. "You're not from here anymore," they said, and then they laid back down as if nothing had happened. I began to fear I was losing my grip, but no, I was ascending, becoming. One night, I returned to the hollow on my own terms, walked the tunnels not in fear, but with purpose. I asked her what came next. She took my hand and led me to a lake. Still, perfectly reflective. "Look," she said. I gazed into it and saw both worlds, the hollow and my home, my family, my life, split but overlapping, two circles in a dark Venn diagram, and in the center, me. "You are the gate now," she said. I fell to my knees. The responsibility, the weight, the power. I wept. She held me. "You carry the fire," she whispered. "You carry me." I returned to the waking world. But now, the door is always open, behind my thoughts, in the corner of every dream. The hollow is not something I escaped. It is something I inherited, and with it, her. She no longer waits in the closet. She lives in me, a passenger, a partner, a queen. And the night is never empty.